What's a horrifying, creepy experience you have lived through? Serious.
When I was maybe 19 or 20, I nearly got run off the road on my way home from work one night. No actual accident, but it shook me up, so I pulled off on the shoulder to calm down before continuing to drive. A windowless van pulled up behind me and a man got out and approached my car. He asked if I was okay, and I told him I was fine, just gathering myself after a scare. He offered for me to wait in the van with his wife and kids. He insisted multiple times that I get in his van. Luckily my door was already locked and I had only cracked the window to speak with him. Since he parked his van right behind me and I could see in my rear view there were no visible passengers in his van.
I was once at my girlfriend's townhouse and they had a backyard with a shared fence with a family or group of families. It was dark night, but one of those nights when the light of the town reflects off of the clouds, so it's eerily light out. The fence between the townhome and the family house was old and worn out, so you could see through the gaps if you really focused. We heard a blood-curdling scream, "No!" followed by an immediate soul-crushing inhale. There was probably 50 feet between the glass sliding door we were at and the fence. They had their floodlights on, and it illuminated the silhouettes of the parents crying. Peering through the fence 50 feet away, you could see a body swaying from the tree. Their son had hung himself and discovered it in the dead of night when their dog ran out to the backyard and activated the floodlights. We could only see through the small gaps in the fence and the shadows of the family experiencing it in real time. Still gives me chills every time I think about it.
I was home alone for the weekend when I was in high school, which was exciting for me as I never really had the house to myself ever. I had a few people over the Friday night and got hammered, then the next night it was just me home alone in my house. I had a case of beers left over and had a movie to watch, so I decided that the hangover would not keep me down and to party by myself and have an awesome night. I ended up getting way too drunk and felt hungry. I decided to cook a mad feed and started whipping up a pasta in a drunken slur. I was singing like a maniac while I played MasterChef in my kitchen, thinking I was top beep. Halfway through singing and stirring the pasta sauce, I hear a tapping sound and some movement in the corner of my eye catches my attention. One of the metal chain ropes used to pull the blinds up and down on the glass doors was moving and hitting the glass door, making a tapping sound. I froze as I watched it moving back and forth by itself. Then my focus kind of zoomed out as I realized that that was not the only metal blind ropes that were moving. We have around 7 sets of blinds on the glass doors and all 7 of the ropes were moving back and forth. My hairs stood up and I walked out of the kitchen as all of them were tapping on the glass doors. No windows or doors in the house were open and they were picking up momentum, with the tapping becoming louder and more frequently. I turned around just in time to see the DVD case of the movie I was watching slide off the TV cabinet on its own. I let out a slurred "Fuark that" and went to bolt outside, just freaking out. On the way out I saw the painting next to the front door. It had been moved and was tilted. I let out a gasp. I ran out the door and wet myself just a little in the process. Beep was real, the horror was real, this was real. Outside I was so distraught and horrified at what had just happened. My house was haunted. There was a beep ghost and it was beep with me. It didn't like me. I realized that I had left the stove on and that I needed to leave, but needed to grab my phone to call someone and get out of there. I decided I would go to the park and try to contact a friend. So I psyched myself up, ran into the house, turned off the stove, beat myself, ran into my room, grabbed the key, my phone and 10 beers. I headed to the park and started drinking again. No one picked up as everyone was wiped out from the night before. Cut a long story short, I vaguely remember being at the park before I blacked out, then in my kitchen crying at some point, then blank. The next day I woke up in my bed. I wondered whether it was just a dream, but I walked out and saw the pasta and DVD case and realized that it was legit. I realized that I had to break the news to my family later that day that our house was haunted and that we would have to move. I went on Facebook and that's when I saw status after status saying that there had been a minor earthquake during the night. Needless to say, I felt like a hungover idiot, but the truth is that was the first earthquake I had experienced, and we don't get earthquakes where I live. Or not usually, at least.
I wake up to my dog quietly, but insistently poking my face with his nose at 4 a.m. As I'm trying to figure out what's wrong, I hear someone using the keypad lock on my front door and putting the wrong code in. That's a bit weird. I go to grab my phone but realize it's completely dead as its charging wire had been failing. Okay, I quietly go to the living room where my landline is. That's 100% dead as well. I found out later it had been cut by my soon-to-be ex-wife before she'd moved into her father's after I asked for a separation. She'd developed a severe mental illness with a lot of paranoia and violence, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. Okay, so no way to get help, so I go up to the blinds and try to look out to see what I'm dealing with. It's this massive brick of a man, literally a triangle-shaped upper body and arms the size of 2 meters. To make things worse, he must have seen me and suddenly started trying to break down the door and yelling that he's going to kill me. Well, hopefully he doesn't mean that literally, but I'm for the first time wondering if I should have rethought having a gun. In a complete beep lie, I yell out that I've called the police and that I'm armed and ready. He seems to know this isn't entirely true and persists. Apparently I didn't even bluff well enough to fool my dog. He'd been being quiet and hiding behind me until I yells, but on hearing me scream, some switch flipped in him. He's the sort of German shepherd that tries, and often succeeds, at befriending cats, squirrels and birds. Up to this point he's basically been a clumsier version of Snow White. He started barking in a way I've never heard a dog bark before. It seriously sounded like some monster from a horror movie. It was the sound you hear right after you've wandered off alone and right before you die. My dog then started trying to break the door down the other direction with his face. And he succeeded in somehow breaking out the security glass in the middle and leaping out at the guy. The guy ran off and he ran after him. He came back about 15 to 20 minutes later on his own, bloody but mostly unharmed. It took a while to figure out what happened as my neighborhood wasn't a high crime area. It turned out my ex had convinced this ex-Navy guy that I was trying to kill her, didn't mention. She thought I killed women by making them orgasm then enslaving them in the afterlife, and that he should kill me before I could harm her. A few weeks after this attempt and before I found out who was behind this, someone broke in my back door's window and instantly regretted coming in when my dog chased them out. It was kind of hilarious despite how scary it was. Literally heard my back window breaking. My dog didn't even bark, but I could hear him running onto the back door, then the sound of a human running around the house as quickly as possible and jumping into a car that sped off. I never found out for sure who that was though. Long story short, he ended up in jail and with some bite wounds. She ended up in civil commitment. For other behavior, the guy claimed he did it on his own, but I doubt that, and I got an order of protection. My dog definitely had some PTSD from that for a while, and would wake me up around 4 a.m. every morning insisting I let him out to literally just walk around the border of our backyard. Though over time he's pretty much back to normal, and fortunately even while more affected still was super friendly and passive. TL, Doctor, X convinced a guy to come kill me after cutting the landline, and while my cell phone was dead. Edit, dog.
After getting evicted from our apartment, my sister and I lived in a station wagon with our mom for almost a month. One night, we were parked in a lot kind of hidden behind some dumpsters. It was just my sister and me, trying to sleep when we woke up to someone tapping on the window. It was an old man with a scraggly beard and these wet lesions all over his face. He smiled at us and told us in this raspy voice, "Hey, roll down the window." In the dim light from the street lamp, he looked like a demon pressing his face against the window glass. We shook our heads and held each other as he went around the station wagon checking each door to see if it would open. Eventually, he came back to the rear, and this time he wasn't smiling but looking really angry and demented. He started slamming on the back window and telling us to open the beep window. You beep beep. I remember being terrified that he was going to break the glass with his fists. He suddenly stopped and walked away when an SUV pulled in and shone its headlights on him. I don't know if it was a cop or a security guard or just someone driving by, but it was enough to scare him away. My sister and I jumped out of the car as the SUV pulled away. We went to the laundromat and sat in there for the rest of the night.
One night of college, I heard a woman screaming for help. I looked out my window and saw her right next to the street. Keep in mind this is a popular college town and the street was busy and there didn't seem to be anything immediately attacking or endangering her. After a few minutes I was about to go down when a car pulled up and 3 guys got out. I could overhear the convo since it was right out of my bedroom, but she said no one was paying attention and they should try some other apartment. They all jumped in and drove off. A month later an apartment got broken into and 4 people were caught, 1 woman and 3 men. Apparently she was in the house and left the door unlocked, and the men then came in and robbed the place.
I was driving home from Target at around 8 p.m. at night and got the feeling the car behind me was following me. I started taking a very weird, circuitous way and they stayed behind me, not tailgating, but close enough to not lose me. Finally, they turned and I breathed a sigh of relief, until I turned on a side street, saw an idling car with its lights off, and the headlights came on and they started following me again. I was freaking out and drove as fast as I safely could to the small town police station. When they saw me turn into the parking lot, they sped off. I sat there until my adrenaline calmed down a bit, and then I drove home and promptly burst into tears. Closest I've ever come to living out a horror movie.
The campus house that I lived in had a pretty beat-up history. Suicides took place there, previous owners died and it was old as hell. I stayed there all summer alone because of my job in my college's city, and legit every night I'd hear beep before I'd chalk it up to one of my 4 other roommates making noise, but now I was alone. I pretty much heard weird beep almost every night. The first day I got there, I went upstairs to my room, and the second I reached the top of the stairs I heard a door slam downstairs. Throughout the summer I heard footsteps, doors, and a bunch of other beep. I was almost sure, still think this today, that there was a squatter who somehow avoided me all summer. There were days when the front door would be unlocked in the morning, where I vividly remember locking it at night. I'd say to myself, okay, here I am locking the door, and give it a few tugs to make sure it was locked, and it'd be opened come morning. Maintenance usually let themselves in periodically, but I'd call them up and they'd say they hadn't been there. The creepiest one was the door that led up to the attic. It was a regular door, not one of those pull-down ones. Some days it'd be slightly opened and I'd pull on it closed, but it wouldn't open by itself. I'd close it, put a chair in front of it, but it'd still be sliiiiightly opened. My roommate came down one weekend that I happened to be gone, and he said he heard a lot of banging as well throughout the night. One day I straight up yelled, "If there's anyone squatting here, I literally do not care, and you can stay, but let me know you're here and we can set up some simple ground rules. I'm chill." I thought I heard some rustling from the basement, but nothing ever happened. Funny part is, if there was a squatter, I wouldn't have cared too much. It's the college's house, so if someone wanted to be my roommate for the summer, I would have been totally okay with it as long as they weren't a psycho.
It's more creepy than horrifying. This was right after the mass Las Vegas shooting. I was at my sister's keeping her company, her husband was out of town, and we had her 2 young children. We were talking about the shooting and how probably a lot of people don't run away at the start of a mass shooting. See, gunfire in real life doesn't sound like it does on TV. At that very moment, we heard this bang bang bang, and I thought it was someone trying to kick in her door. We took the kids to the bedroom and hit the panic button on her security system. It wasn't someone trying to kick in the door. Someone had shot through her front door.
When I was 19, I was 7 months pregnant with my oldest daughter. I still lived with my parents and came home after work around 11:30 p.m. I usually checked that the vehicles were locked before going inside. But this night I was overcome with a sense of immense fear. I wouldn't even look towards my parents' vehicles and hurried into the house. 20 minutes later, a guy is knocking on our door telling us that my parents' SUV was on fire and to get out of the house, saving our lives, and we called 911. There was a serial arsonist on the loose in our town, and when he was caught and he confessed, he admitted to watching me come home that night and how he was preparing to hurt me in case I had caught him, but I never looked over his direction as he was sitting in my parents' SUV when I had arrived home. It took years before I was able to be out at night alone.
The most horrifying experience of my life is probably searching for my grandfather's pulse after he had committed suicide.
The 13 years my stepfather lived with me. I still have scars from it.
Salmonella.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more quality content every day.